It was a Sunday in October, the kind of afternoon the mountains make look like a painting, and my daughter-in-law slid a folder across the dinner table and said, "It's just a signature, Nell. We're family." The folder had 6 sticky notes on it, little yellow flags, each one marking a line with a printed "Sign here" arrow. Someone had been very organized about this. I looked at the folder. I looked at Brooke. Marcus had excused himself to check on something in the kitchen. Something had boiled over, she said, and he had been gone for about 4 minutes. The timing had a quality to it I recognized. "What does Marcus think about this?" I said. Brooke smiled the way she smiles when she considers a question already settled. "He trusts me to handle the details. You know how he is with paperwork." I do know how he is with paperwork. His father was the same way. I was the one who filed the taxes for 41 years, and this would make the 3 of us co-trustees, I said, reading the top of the first page. "It protects you," she said. "If something happened medically, cognitively, Marcus and I could step in without going through probate. It's responsible planning, Nell. Frankly, I'm a little surprised it hasn't been done already." She picked up a pen from beside her wine glass and set it on top of the folder. A good pen. She had brought it with her. I looked at the pen. "Medically or cognitively," I said. "It's standard language." She kept her voice warm. "It doesn't mean anything is wrong. It just means we're prepared. We've earned a seat at that table, Nell," she had said earlier, before dinner, when she was standing in my kitchen in Asheville, helping me with the salad she had brought herself rather than the one I'd already made. "Marcus and I. 2 years of driving you to appointments, handling your insurance calls, being the ones who show up. Literally at that table." She gestured at my dining room. "We've earned it." I had not said anything to that. I had rinsed a bowl. Now I looked at the folder on the table between us. I looked at the pen. I thought about Gerald's chair in the corner of the living room, 15 feet away. I thought about the morning in 2007 when I made the last mortgage payment on the house on Kimberly Avenue and sat in that chair and called Gerald at work to tell him, and he said, "Nell, that house is yours." "I think I left my reading glasses in the car," I said. Brooke said, "I can read it to you." "That's all right," I said. "I'll just be a minute." I took my coat from the hook by the door. I walked out to the driveway. I got in my car. I called Karen from the parking lot. It was 4:30 on a Sunday, and she answered on the second ring. "My name is Eleanor Hargrove. Everyone calls me Nell. I am 70 years old, and I live in Asheville, North Carolina, in a 3-bedroom brick house on Kimberly Avenue that Gerald and I bought in 1984 and paid off in 2007. The porch has 3 front steps that Brooke has mentioned as a liability on 4 separate occasions. They are fine steps. I go up and down them every day. I was a school librarian for 35 years at Reynolds High School. I cataloged 40,000 books, approximately, over the course of that career. I managed a budget that was never large enough and never went over. I recommended books to students who thought they hated reading and watched some of them change their minds. That last part was the work I liked best. Gerald was a civil engineer. He built bridges, mostly, road underpasses, the kind of infrastructure that people drive over every day without thinking about who designed the load tolerances. He was proud of that. He said the best work is the work nobody notices because everything went right. We raised Marcus and Darren in the house on Kimberly Avenue. Darren is 40 now, lives in Denver, does similar work to what his father did. Marcus is 43, accountant in Weaverville, married Brooke 6 years ago. I liked Brooke those first 2 years. I want to be clear about that. She was organized, warm, interested. She asked questions about Gerald that no one else asked anymore. She brought good food to family dinners. Gerald died of pancreatic cancer 9 years ago. He was 64. The speed of it was something I never fully made peace with 11 weeks from diagnosis to the end. But that's not what this story is about. What this story is about is the leather chair in the corner of the living room. Brown, slightly worn on the right armrest, where Gerald always rested his elbow when he read. He read every evening after dinner. He had opinions about novels, the way some men have opinions about sports. When he died, I moved everything else. I did not move the chair. And what this story is about is a folder with 6 yellow sticky notes that appeared on my own kitchen counter on a Thursday afternoon when I was doing laundry. I want to tell you how it happens gradually, because I think that's the thing most people don't understand about this kind of situation. It doesn't arrive all at once. It arrives in small portions, each one reasonable by itself. Each one just slightly over the line of what was asked for. It started 2 years after Gerald died. Marcus suggested I needed help with the house insurance paperwork. The company had changed their forms, and the new language was confusing. He was right. It was confusing. Brooke offered to call them on my behalf. I said all right. She sorted it out in one phone call. I thanked her. The next year, she offered to help me with the Medicare supplemental application. Again, she was competent. Again, I thanked her. Then she started coming over more often. Saturdays, usually. While Marcus was golfing, she would bring lunch, and we would sit on the porch with the 3 steps, and she would ask questions about the house. When was the roof last done? Who did the HVAC maintenance? Had I had an appraisal recently? I answered her questions. They seemed like the kind of questions a conscientious person asks. The first time she mentioned the stairs was 16 months ago. She said, "These 3 steps are going to be a real issue if your balance ever becomes a concern, Nell." I said, "My balance was fine." She said, "Of course. I'm just thinking ahead. The second time was 8 months ago. The third time was 4 months ago. The fourth time was the Sunday she brought that folder to dinner. In between, there were insurance papers she'd filed on my behalf without quite asking. A Medicare notice she'd called about and told me about afterward. A phone call to my bank about a charge I hadn't noticed, which she brought up at dinner as evidence that I needed someone keeping an eye on things. I'm not the kind of person who lets things slip," I said. "Of course not," she said. "But you're 70, Nell. Things change." I looked at Marcus. He was eating his dinner. That was the moment I knew something was happening. Not because of what Brooke said, because of what Marcus didn't say. The Thursday I found the folder, I was doing laundry. I came through the kitchen to get a bottle of water from the refrigerator. The folder was on the kitchen counter, between a magazine and a utility bill. I had not put it there. I set down the water bottle. I opened the folder. The document was 23 pages. I read the first 3 pages standing at the counter. Then I closed it. I put the kettle on. I waited for the kettle. I poured the tea. Then I took the folder to the living room and sat down in Gerald's chair. I read all 23 pages. I am not a lawyer, but I spent 35 years cataloging legal reference books, and I have a general practice attorney for a college friend, and I understand language well enough to know when it is doing 2 things at once. The document was doing 2 things at once. On its face, it established a revocable living trust designed to protect my property and financial accounts from the complications of probate. That part was reasonable. That part was, in fact, something Karen had suggested I consider 5 years ago. The other thing the document was doing, naming Marcus and Brooke as co-trustees with authority to make decisions on my behalf in the event of physical or cognitive incapacity, as determined by 2 licensed physicians, or, alternatively, as indicated by the sustained inability of the grantor to manage trust assets independently. Sustained inability to manage trust assets independently. The house on Kimberly Avenue was the primary asset of the trust. I sat in Gerald's chair for a long time. There was a stack of library books on the kitchen table I'd been meaning to return for 3 months. One of them was a history of the Appalachian Trail I'd read 4 times. I could see it from where I was sitting. Then I put the folder back on the counter, exactly where I found it, and finished my laundry. I did not call Marcus. I called Darren. Darren picked up on the fourth ring. He sounded like he was outside. He is always outside. Mom, what's going on? Are you busy? I'm at the trailhead. I can talk. What's going on? I told him about the folder. I read him the relevant language from the pages I'd photographed on my phone. He was quiet while I read. When I finished, he said, "Did Marcus know about this?" "I don't know," I said. "I didn't ask him." "Mom, not yet," I said. Darren has his father's quality of going very still when he's thinking. I can hear it even on the phone, the quality of the silence changes. He said, "Does Karen know? I'm calling her next." I said, "Call me after." He said, Karen came over the following Tuesday. I had photographed all 23 pages and printed them. She sat at my kitchen table with the stack of library books at one end and the printed document at the other, and read for 35 minutes without speaking. I made coffee. I watched October come through the kitchen window at the angle Gerald called his favorite hour. When she set it down, she said, "Nell, who prepared this?" I said I didn't know. She said, "This was done by a real estate attorney. Look at the asset valuation language. It's formatted the way you'd format a property transfer, not an estate document. Someone who works in real estate drafted this or directed someone to draft it." She paused. "It's not illegal. It's aggressive. Tell me what it would actually mean if I signed it," I said. She told me. It would mean Marcus and Brooke could petition to act as primary trustees if they could document evidence of my inability to independently manage trust assets, and the standard for that documentation was their determination, not mine, not a court's, theirs, reviewed by physicians they could choose. The house would be the principal trust asset. The house would be managed by the trust. The trust would be managed by Marcus and Brooke. They'd need Marcus to agree, I said. He's co-trustee. Yes, Karen said. He would. We looked at each other. I need you to draft something for me, I said. What kind of something? A trust. My own. Irrevocable. The house in it. Me as sole trustee for the remainder of my life. Darren as successor trustee. Karen wrote something on her notepad. She looked at me over her glasses. And Marcus? Marcus, I said, is going to need to read that document first. 3 weeks passed. Karen was preparing the paperwork. Darren had booked a flight for the first week of November. I had not said anything to Marcus or Brooke. This is the part of the story that is hardest to explain, because most people want to know why I waited. Why I didn't call Marcus the day I found the folder. Why I sat with it for 3 weeks. I sat with it because I had spent 35 years as a librarian, and librarians do not respond to the first edition. They wait for confirmation. They cross-reference. They look at what the document is doing, not just what it says, and they understand that a confrontation made in anger produces a different outcome than a confrontation made with preparation. Also, if I am being completely honest, I needed to be absolutely certain before I said anything to Marcus that could not be unsaid, because Marcus loves me. I know that, and whatever Brooke had or hadn't done, Marcus was my son, and I did not want to damage something I couldn't repair, so I waited. In the meantime, I had my ordinary life. I returned 2 of the library books, not the Appalachian Trail one. I had dinner with a friend on Wednesday. I went to church on Sunday and stood in the parking lot on Marymount Avenue talking to Karen for 20 minutes about nothing having to do with any of this. I sat on the front porch in the October evenings and watched the light go down over the mountains. 3 steps, not a liability. The Sunday dinner was Brooke's idea. She called to invite me on Thursday. She was making a lamb dish. She knew I liked it. She wanted a real family afternoon. Marcus got on the phone briefly. Mom, you'll come, right? Brooke's been cooking since yesterday. I said I would come. I did not tell Karen where I was going. Karen would have told me not to go. The dinner was good. The lamb was good. Brooke had made 2 sides and a dessert, and set the table properly, napkin rings and everything. She was warm in the way she is when she is moving towards something, and I sat and ate the lamb and let her be warm. After Marcus cleared the plates, Brooke set her wine glass down and said, "Actually, while it's just us, I have something I've been meaning to bring up." She reached beside her chair and produced the folder. The same folder. 6 yellow sticky notes. The organized arrows. "This is something Marcus and I have been thinking about for a while," she said. She turned to Marcus. "Right, babe?" Marcus said. "It makes sense, Mom. It's just estate planning." I looked at Marcus. He had not read it. I could see that in the way he was looking at the table rather than at me. He knew the general shape of what was being presented. He did not know the specific language. "It protects everything you've worked for," Brooke said. "It keeps the house out of probate. It makes sure that if anything ever changed with your health, your capabilities." She slid the folder across the table. "It's just a signature, Nell. We're family." She set a pen on top of the folder. I looked at the pen. I thought about 23 pages. I thought about sustained inability to manage trust assets independently. I thought about Karen's notepad and Darren's flight, and the way Gerald had sounded on the phone when I called him in 2007 to tell him the mortgage was paid. "We've earned a seat at that table, Nell." That's what she'd said in the kitchen before dinner. Literally, at that table. 2 years of showing up. We've earned it. I looked at Brooke. "I think I left my reading glasses in the car," I said. "I can read it to you," Brooke said. "That's all right." I reached for my coat on the hook by the door. "I'll just be a minute." I walked out. I got in my car. I called Karen. She answered on the second ring. I said, "Karen, I'm in Marcus's driveway. She just tried to get me to sign it." Karen said, "Are you all right?" "I'm fine," I said. "I didn't sign it." "Good. Drive home, Nell. Drive home, and I'll call you in an hour." I looked at the front door of Marcus's house. The lights were on inside. I could see the shape of Marcus moving past the kitchen window. I said, "Karen, I'm going back inside." There was a pause. "Nell, I'm not going to sign anything," I said. "I just need Marcus to see something." I hung up. I went back inside. Brooke was at the sink. Marcus was at the table, the folder still in front of him. He looked up when I came in. I sat down across from him. I took a folded piece of paper from my coat pocket, the page I had printed from Karen's initial reading, with the key language underlined in blue ink. I set it in front of Marcus. "Read that paragraph," I said. "The one I've underlined." Marcus read it. He read it again. Then he looked up. His face had changed. He said, "Brooke." Brooke turned from the sink. Marcus said, "Did you know this language was in here?" She said, "It's standard language. It says we can determine if she's capable of managing the assets ourselves," Marcus said. "Without a court." "Marcus, did you read this?" he said. The room was quiet. Brooke dried her hands on the dish towel. She set it down carefully. "I thought you trusted me to handle the details," she said. Marcus looked at the paper in his hand. Then he looked at me. I watched something cross his face. That I recognized the specific look of someone who has been made to understand that 2 things they believed were true cannot both be true at the same time. I stood up. "I'm going home," I said. "Thank you for dinner, Brooke. The lamb was good." I put on my coat. I walked to the door. I went down the 3 steps, into the driveway. Behind me, I could hear Marcus starting to ask a question. I drove home. I sat in Gerald's chair. I stayed there until it was dark. I want to stop here, because I think the thing this story is really about is not Brooke, and not the document, and not even the house. It's about the assumption the one that comes packaged as concern. Brooke had decided at some point in the past 2 years, probably gradually, the way most decisions like this are made, that I was a situation to be managed, not a person to be consulted. A situation, and once she had decided that, everything she did, none of it was illogical from inside the assumption. That's the thing that I have to be careful about, because it would be easy to make Brooke into a simpler person than she is. She is not a simple person. She grew up with very little, I've heard Marcus say. She built her financial life from nothing, and she is very good at seeing what could go wrong. She has a genuine skill for it. The problem is that she applied that skill to me without asking, and somewhere in the applying it became about what she and Marcus would inherit, and somewhere in that, the thing she was managing stopped being a situation and started being a person again. And the person pushed back. I don't know if that's enough of an explanation. I'm not sure it needs to be. What I keep thinking about is the question she asked, or rather, the question she never asked. She never once said, "Nell, what do you want?" Not about the house, not about the paperwork, not about the trust, not about any of it. And here's the thing I'm not completely certain about. I wonder if I should have said something sooner. There was a moment about 8 months ago when she mentioned the stairs for the 3rd time where I could have said, clearly, directly, "I need you to understand that I am managing my own life and I would like that to continue." I didn't. I rinsed a bowl. I let it pass. Maybe that changed nothing. Maybe the document was already being drafted. I don't know. I think about it. Darren flew in 4 days later. He did not call ahead to Marcus. He came to Kimberly Avenue with a bag for a week and helped me rake the leaves off the porch and said almost nothing about any of it until the 2nd evening, when we were sitting at the kitchen table with the library books still at the end of it, and he said, "Tell me the whole thing from the beginning." I told him. He listened. He asked 2 questions. He didn't say much afterward. Then he said, "I should have been more present." I said, "That's not what this is." "Mom," he said, "I live in Denver." "Yes," I said, "you do. And I live in Asheville, and we both manage fine." He looked at the Appalachian Trail book at the end of the table. He said, "Have you really read that 4 times?" "5, I said. I lied. He almost smiled. Karen finalized my trust the following week. The house on Kimberly Avenue is in it. I am the sole trustee. Darren is the successor trustee. The language is specific, precise, and leaves no room for the kind of ambiguity that produces folder sliding at Sunday dinners. Marcus called me 3 days after the dinner. He said, "Mom, I'm so sorry." He said it twice. He said he had not read the document before Brooke brought it. He said he was asking questions he should have asked months ago. I said, "I know you are." He said, "Are we okay?" I said, "We're okay. You and I are okay." He understood what that meant. The next several months were hard for Marcus, in ways I am not going to describe in detail because they are his to describe or not. What I will say is that the marriage held, and it did not hold the way it was, and I don't know yet what it is becoming. Marcus comes to Kimberly Avenue more often now. He comes alone sometimes. He sits on the porch. Brooke has not been to the house since October. I have not closed that door, but I have not opened it either. The last thing I want to tell you is about a Saturday in November, the week before Darren flew back to Denver. We had coffee in the morning. He helped me bring some boxes down from the attic. Nothing important, just the kind of boxes that accumulate when you have lived in a house for 40 years. In the afternoon, he sat in the living room with a book. I was in the kitchen. After a while, I went to the doorway and looked in. He was in Gerald's chair. His feet were up on the footrest. He was reading one of the library books I'd never gotten around to returning. Memory object. Appearance 4. Darren in Gerald's chair. No explanation. The viewer understands. He looked up and saw me in the doorway. He said, "This is a good chair." "It is," I said. He went back to his book. I went back to the kitchen. The Appalachian Trail book was still on the table. I poured myself coffee. I looked out the window at the October light. It was November now, but the light was similar, and it was coming through at Gerald's angle, the one he called his favorite hour. I stood there for a little while. Then I sat down and opened the book to page 1. I had earned that. If you are watching this and there is someone in your life who has decided, without asking, what you are and are not capable of, I want to say something to you. You are allowed to wait until you are ready. You are allowed to make a phone call before you make a confrontation. You are allowed to consult an attorney, write things down, and act from preparation rather than from pain. That is not weakness. That is the opposite of weakness. You are also allowed to decide that a relationship is salvageable and worth the cost of salvaging it. You are allowed to decide that it isn't. Both of those are your decisions, not anyone else's. What you are not required to do is sign things you haven't read. What you are not required to do is let someone else decide when your moment is over. I'm not sure I handled every part of this correctly. I think about the 8 months I said nothing when I should have said something clearer. I think about whether Marcus would have made different choices if I'd given him the chance earlier. I genuinely don't know. What I know is the house on Kimberly Avenue is mine. The 3 front steps are mine. The chair in the corner of the living room is mine, and Gerald's. And nobody is going to call it a liability. I'll leave you with a question. Drop your answer in the comments. I read them all. Would you have gone back inside? Or would you have driven home? Be honest. There's no wrong answer. But I want to know. Thank you for listening. Take care of what you've built, and read what you sign.